Hello everyone and welcome to version 2 of the St. Louis City Mayoral Forum hosted by the 9 combined Democratic ward organizations. We have the 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th, 11th, 14th, 15th, 24th, and 25th Democratic ward organizations who all came together to make sure that today we can hear from mayoral candidates about who is best suited to represent us in City Hall. We have 3 of the 4 candidates here with us, and we'll be hearing from them shortly. The reason why all of these ward organizations came together and decided that it's important that despite all of the social distancing and our inability to meet in person, we should still hear from these candidates is because voter education is a pillar of the mission of every ward organization. So one of their main responsibilities is to ensure that they know who is running for office and they know and that membership can decide who is best suited to represent them by actually meeting them in person. Since that's not possible, we decided to do the next best thing, and we hope that tonight you will be able to hear from each of them and get questions answered and be able to make a better, more informed decision at the ballot box. So really, ward organizations are a great place to start if you're trying to get informed about city politics and get involved. And I recommend that you check out the links in the bio and the information part of this feed, and check out your local ward organization if you want to get more involved. But thank you for being here, and thank you for being a part of this forum. It's a great place to start. So speaking of the ballot, we are going to have a slightly different process this time around. If you haven't heard already, Proposition D passed back in November, which changes our election process. So on the first Tuesday of March, we will have a ballot rather than a primary ballot. We will have 4 candidates for mayor. You may have other candidates as well, depending on if you're an odd-numbered ward. But for mayor, we will have 4 nonpartisan candidates on your ballot. And you will have the opportunity to vote for as many of them as you choose. So there will be 4 candidates. You can vote up to all 4 of them if you so choose. But ultimately what happens after that, after the votes are tallied, the 2 candidates with the most vote totals get to go to a runoff in the first week of April, and we'll go back to the ballot box as we normally do for the general election and decide which of them gets to represent us in City Hall. So those are the changes that you can expect. If you have questions about the process, go to your ward organization, talk to your committee people, and get a little bit more information about it. You can always go to STL Approves and check out the information they have on their website. They were behind the initiative Prop D, which changed this process, and looking forward to something a little bit different this time around. So with that, I will turn this over to the League of Women Voters, who will be moderating this event.
We're happy to see all of you here. We'd like to welcome you to the candidate forum for the very, very important position of mayor of the city of St. Louis. We'd like to thank the Democratic organizations in wards 6, 7, 8, 9, 11, 14, 15, 24, and 25 for sponsoring this forum. So this is a pretty big deal with all those folks involved. My name is Louise Wilkerson. I'm a member of the League of Women Voters. In fact, I'm a co-president, and I will be moderating this forum. We also have another league member who will be helping us out today, Ms. Barbara Harris, who is our timekeeper. And I'll tell you a little bit more about the time allotments in a moment. We'd also like to thank S.J. Creek and Tyler Schlickenmeyer for their assistance in putting this together. They're providing the technical know-how. And so our technology today is in their hands, and I'm sure it'll go well. I'd like to take a moment to introduce our candidates. We are so pleased to have Honorable Tashara Jones, Treasurer of the City of St. Louis, Mr. Andrew Jones, an executive with Southwestern Electric, and the Honorable Kara Spencer, who's the alderperson or alderwoman of the 20th Ward. So I want to save as much time as I can for the candidates to respond to the questions. The questions have been submitted by members of the public. So I want to make that clear. The League of Women Voters did not come up with the questions, neither did any of the ward organizations. Members of the public were invited to submit questions electronically, and they did so. We got the questions and we tried to, group those that are similar together and select those that we feel address the most important. So let me go over the ground rules and listen very carefully. Okay, this is not a debate. This is a forum. And so let me tell you how it goes. Each candidate will have 2 minutes for an opening statement, and then they will have 1 minute to answer each question. Each candidate will be asked to respond to all the questions. So we don't have questions targeted to specific candidates. Now, each candidate will have 2 minutes each for a closing statement. They are to focus their remarks on what they believe. They are not to refer to their opponents, the opponent's questions or remarks. The purpose of this forum is to give them an opportunity to present their own positions. And just for the record, although I don't see any difficulties here in this regard, but campaign banners, clothing, or buttons should not be visible during the forum. Okay, now the timekeeper. All right, so Miss Harris, Miss Barbara Harris, will hold up a sign indicating when a candidate has 30 seconds left. Then when those 30 seconds have gone by, she will flip it to stop. And they're to stop even in mid-sentence because their time will be up. That way we will get to cover a broader range of questions. Okay, so candidates, are we ready? Yep, good. Okay, so we're going to start with the Honorable Tashara Jones, and she's going to give her 2-minute opening statement.
Yes, thank you to the League of Women Voters and Combined Wards for hosting this today. I'm Treasurer Tashara Jones, and I use the she series pronouns. Since I began my career as a public servant, I've worked to make sure that the St. Louis we hand over to the next generation isn't as broken as the one we inherited. That means confronting the harsh realities of our past and saying yes to the brighter opportunities of our future. See, 20 years ago, I lost my mother to cancer. I was barely an adult and my life came apart at the seams. It took me 10 years to rebuild. I worked hard, but I was also lucky. I had a father who loved me, a grandmother who prayed for me, and a family that wouldn't let me fail. Today, everyone isn't so lucky, because where does a child go when a member of their network comes down with COVID? What does a mother do when a stray bullet erases another innocent child's future? These questions and more go unanswered while the city goes about business as usual. We need to say no to business as usual and say yes to a St. Louis that's ready to tackle the 21st century. You should be able to succeed here regardless of your skin color, who you love, how you worship, or any identity you hold. I want to build a city where each and every one of you feels welcome, and I know that we can, together. In the St. Louis that you and I are going to build together, youth will be at the center of our planning. Police will not be the only answer to 911. Tax revenues will help fix our leaky civic systems, and your government will be open to you. We're not a poor city. We're a cheap city. We refuse to invest in what will move our city forward. This is about all of you, whether you live in Penrose, Holly Hills, and everywhere in between. I'm running to create our St. Louis, united, strong, confident, and equitable. So on March 2nd, say yes to Tashara Jones for mayor of the city of St. Louis. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Jones. Now we'd like to ask Mr. Andrew Jones, executive with Southwestern Electric, for his opening statement.
Good afternoon, and thank you for having me. It's an absolute pleasure. My name is Andrew Jones. I'm currently a Vice President of Business Development and Marketing for Southwestern Electric out of Greenville, Illinois. Just like most of you who are watching this, I was an ordinary citizen sitting at home and would like to be at home now eating bonbons and Ted Drews. But a call came. A call came because I looked at what was happening to our city. Our city is experiencing a precipitous decline. 4 years ago, I mentioned that the city was at a crossroads. High violence, no economic development, schools were performing poorly, no workforce development, things were looking bleak. Today, I'm saying it's further depleting. We're at a point of no return at this particular point in time, and nothing seems to be done about it. I am entering the race because I have over 20 plus years of executive experience, academic excellence in pursuit of MBA from WashU, Master's in International Business. I'm pursuing a master's degree now in economic development, and I've been intricately involved with the city of St. Louis and its development, working with youth in the 1990s when things were violent then, and I'm trying to get involved now to bring my area of expertise to help the city. It seems that quite a few initiative projects are being undertaken in the city that shows that it lends itself to precipitous decline. And I want to do something about it by ensuring that we use the best practices in order to turn the city around, because this is a phenomenal city, a city that I would like to say is striving for excellence. And I like for it to be the guidepost that all other cities could look to say that St. Louis turned it around. I am running for mayor because I know I have the skill set to do so. And I'm looking forward to extending the conversation to talk about those subjects that mean that the city will turn around. Thank you, Andrew Jones.
Thank you very much, Mr. Jones. And now we'd like to ask the Honorable Kara Spencer, Alderwoman of the 20th Ward in the city of St. Louis, for her opening statement.
Good afternoon. Thank you to all the ward organizations and the League of Women Voters for hosting us, and for everyone who's tuning in. I have to say, I never thought I'd be here running for mayor. After all, I'm the first in my family to get a college degree. I earned a degree in mathematics, paid my own way through school, slinging burger. It was 2015. I was living a normal life as a single mom here with a normal job. And when the only free public pool here on the south side of St. Louis, a safe place for our kids and our families, was closed by the city, and there was no plan to reopen it. So it was that year that I decided to run for alderman against a 20-year incumbent in a race that pundits said looked impossible. But I won, and I got right to work with dogged determination on getting that pool reopened, and we reopened it before summer hit. Now that pool serves as a reminder for what our neighborhoods can be if we work together and lead with our citizens' best interests at the heart of our decision-making. Since my first day at the Board of Aldermen, I have stood up for everyday St. Louisans, passed legislation reining in the payday predatory lending industry, established an air quality control monitoring program, and focused on other issues of environmental racism. I came down hard on slumlords like Paul McKee, and while some in City Hall were working with special interests to privatize our airport, I not only stood with advocates and activists, I worked hard to make sure we defeated them, and we did. I love St. Louis, I believe in St. Louis, but we aren't gonna solve our problems just because we want to. We need a mayor who is going to do the real hard work of leading our city a better place. That means tackling issues like crime, racial disparities with the same energy and citizen-focused fervor that I came to the table with airport privatization. We are a phenomenal city with the best zoo, the best baseball team, and the best people. And I'm running for mayor to lead our city in a new direction and make St. Louis what it can be.
Thank you. Okay. So let's start off with our first question. And we'll start off with the Honorable Tashara Jones. And we will rotate who's first and who's second as we go through the question. So the same person isn't always first and so forth. Okay, does that sound fair? Good. Okay. Here's the question. Reflecting on the Centene CEO statement, putting the city on notice to address the growing crime problem. What is your specific actionable plan to effectively reduce violent crimes in the city of St. Louis?
Yes, that's a great question. So my plan is to put the public back in public safety. And that means using all of the tools in the toolbox to address gun violence as a public health crisis in the city. So that means bringing everybody to the table, our flagship universities and hospitals, the faith community, the business community, philanthropy, and address it as a region, because crime just doesn't stop at the Mississippi River or at Skinker Boulevard. And when we put the public back in public safety, that also means making sure that we're deploying the right type of professional to the right type of call. That means that with our training our 911 operators to triage the right type of call, and making sure that police aren't the only people that respond to 911. So putting all the tools in the tool belt, bringing everybody to the table, we'll see a marked decrease in gun violence in the city of St. Louis.
Thank you. Mr. Jones, same question.
Violent crime.
Okay, go ahead.
Yes, violent crime. We have to deal with solving problems, and the city has a history of seeming to do so, just throwing things up against the wall and not getting anything solved. Violent crime is a very specific category. We know that approximately 80% of the homicides that are committed within the city of St. Louis is committed by a very small group, probably less than 1% of people who are associated with narcotics, drugs, and gangs. These are criminals. We have to remove criminals from the street by being effective in our policing. And if you remove that number of criminals who commit this high level of violent crime, you will see that the crime numbers would drop precipitously. The police do a phenomenal job at what they do. They're excellent at what they do. They're professionals, and they want to execute and do their jobs right. They need leadership that will put them in position so they can do their jobs.
Hey, thank you very much. Ms. Spencer.
Addressing violence has to be the #1 priority of the next mayor. That is why, as mayor, I will implement a comprehensive strategy. I released last week a 10-step comprehensive plan for actually addressing violence in our communities based on what other cities have been successful at implementing. We're going to start with a strategy, a program that has recently helped Oakland drop its homicide rate by 50% in just 6 years. It's called Focused Deterrence, and will allow us to focus on the small number of individuals at risk of being involved in violent behavior. We're going to increase trust between our communities and our police department, first and foremost by picking up every single 911 call that comes in. That is something we are doing an abysmal job at right now. And lastly, we're going to shore up the administrative function of city government outside of the police department, putting in place a problem slumlord landholder unit, and making sure we're coming down hard with the laws that we have in place.
Thank you very much. Okay, second question. We'll start with Mr. Jones. Mr. Jones, in your opinion, what social services do you think should be provided to mitigate high crime levels that result from poverty?
One of the things I talk about continuously is economic development, community development. Within community development, there are efforts, there are agencies, there are institutions that absolutely do a phenomenal job, and we don't talk about those agencies and their areas of expertise that would help to mitigate those issues that are associated with those who are unfortunate and can't participate fully within the system. Workforce development, getting people jobs, getting them married up to institutions and jobs where they can earn a decent living that puts them in a position where they can afford affordable homes. They can afford market rate homes. And once people are working, in which we have a more of a personnel issue than a job, we get them married up and they will be able to be fully functional and to be able to change the trajectory of their lives.
Okay. Thank you. Ms. Spencer?
I put this in the chat, Louise. I'm so sorry. I didn't hear the question. Could you repeat it?
Okay,
please?
that's okay. Here it is again, no problem. In your opinion, what social services do you think should be provided to mitigate high crime levels resulting from poverty?
Oh my gosh, the list is practically endless. We have to start by giving our children the education they need to succeed in life. That's our workforce development. So I have a plan to work directly with our schools throughout the city to build a comprehensive plan to educate our youth. We have to address addiction issues. And that is something that I have been a staunch supporter of, working at the Board of Aldermen to put in policies and practices in place to support those who are experiencing drug addiction. We have to address poverty, making sure folks have access to equal housing and making sure that we are protecting those most vulnerable among us. And that starts with providing health services. We saw the inequities coming out of COVID-19. And as mayor, I will work with our social service agencies to strengthen that relationship between those who are helping and providing the assistance from the city that they need to thrive.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Jones?
One of the two of the programs I started in the Office of Financial Empowerment, I think can help here. One of them being the College Kids Children's Savings Account Program, which provides a savings account for every kindergartner in a public school in the city of St. Louis. Programs like this have been shown to help decrease poverty and research from Washington University says that children with less than $500 saved are 3 times more likely to go to college and 4 times more likely to complete college than children without savings. And we know that post-secondary education is necessary in order to participate in today's economy. The second in the office is just by our financial counseling and education and empowerment. We've been working with St. Louis Public Schools for the last 5 years with teachers, with parents, with other school administrators to expand our services to make sure that people can increase their credit scores because your credit score determines how much you pay for everything.
Okay, thank you very much. All right, our third question, and we'll start with Ms. Spencer. Okay, here is the question. How would you, as mayor, address systemic racism in the police department? Specifically, the use of excessive force and the killing of Black men. Unmute yourself.
This is such an important question and so important to the relationship between our communities and our police department. I'll start as part of my 10-point crime plan. A big piece of that is improving trust. So as mayor, I'll work to update our use of force policies to clearly articulate a commitment to the reverence of life. And we'll work to implement enhanced de-escalation techniques, and we're going to mandate transparency in those use of force investigations. I am committed to bringing on board an Office of Equity and Inclusion within the police department, and we'll appoint a chief officer to oversee department policies, processes, hiring, and promotions and that sort of thing. Without equity within our police department, without rooting out racism within all departments, and that includes our police department, we cannot build the trust within our community, our police department, and their employer, the city of St. Louis.
Thank you. All right, Ms. Tashara Jones, same question.
Yes, I believe that those who are closest to the problem are closest to the solution. And I have been unapologetically a Black woman most or all of my life. And my son recently said to me when he was asking what the mayor does, will you be over the police? And I said, yes. And he said, well, then that means I'll be safe. My son, a Black boy in this city, should not have to feel that his mother has to be mayor in order for him to be safe. And so from where I sit, I'll be able to directly hold our police officers accountable and be at the table to make sure that racial equity is at the center of every policy and procedure that we enact in my mayoral administration.
Okay, thank you. Let's see, Mr. Jones.
Under my leadership, for all the departments that I control, we treat people as valued humans, extending humanity across the board. And if there's any levels of discrimination, racism, it's intolerable, and it doesn't happen under my watch because a fish rots from the head down because leadership is the problem. To blanketly say that racism exists in any particular department or anything like that, if we haven't assessed it, we don't know for sure, but it could not and will not exist under the parameters that I lead. Everyone across the board, I don't care who your partner is, I don't care what your religious beliefs are, constitutionally, you are supposed to be treated with equal treatment across the board according to the law. And that's what we will do under my administration. It will not be tolerated one iota, period.
Okay, thank you. All right. Let's move on to the fourth question, which is somewhat related to the third question. And I think we'll start with Tashara Jones. The question is, how would you, as mayor, help institute changes to the police department recommended in the recently released Teneo company study on the St. Louis Police Department? And do you agree with Teneo's findings?
Yes, so that was a very decent report and revealed a lot of things that I think we already knew were within the police department, that racism exists, that promotions are subjective, that there isn't a plan, and that there's poor communication. Essentially, we have to take those recommendations and do whatever we can to alleviate those problems. But I also think we need to take a step back. There was another report done by the Ethical Society of Police several years ago that outlined a lot of the same problems. So I would take both of those reports, as well as the Ferguson Commission report, which also talks about crime and public safety, and develop a strategic plan going forward to address the items that were revealed in those reports.
Okay, thank you. Let's see, Mr. Jones.
In effectively leading any discharge of duty or being over any department or institution, there has to be comprehensive analysis. To take a report at face value, no matter the report, I have the arbitration ability and the intelligence to be able to discern what I think is complete information and incomplete information. Certainly they have their position. I certainly want to get more data so I can make an assessment so that we can have thorough understanding of what those challenges are, what those issues are, because again, under my leadership stewardship, I don't experience those types of problems. I don't tolerate those types of problems because the leader should be able to ensure that we do the right things as well as we do things right. So if you have that leadership, you can eliminate all of those particular problems. You take things under consideration, but it's not the gospel over all results and all assessments and analysis, particularly if there's some level of incomplete data that may be included and hadn't been thoroughly thought through.
All right, thank you. Ms. Spencer.
Thank you. The recommendations or the action items that I've included in my 10-step program that I mentioned earlier came directly from that report, Louise. And, you know, it's horrifying in reading that report that we don't have some of these things already in place that was very clearly stated that we need to include in our use of force policy, that there is a prohibition for use of force in a discriminatory manner. And I'm horrified to learn that it took a report to identify that for us. But using that report produced by Teneo and some of the law enforcement professionals at the top of their class nomination, we should absolutely make a commitment to, at the very least, in implementing those recommendations and taking a look at some of the reports also produced by Ethical Society and others, including the Ferguson Commission report that have outlined some of those things that the city can and should be doing within our police department to improve equity.
Okay, thank you. And I'll see how to pronounce that, Teneo, not, okay.
That's how I pronounce it, Louise. So, I mean, you know, I could be
Oh.
incorrect there. I don't want to
Okay, okay,
superimpose.
all right. I appreciate that. Okay, so we will go on to the next question and we'll start with Mr. Jones, I believe. And so with COVID-19 negatively impacting everyone, as mayor, what powers would you continue to exercise or add to mitigate the burden on citizens?
Well, one thing that we have to do, we have to take into consideration every class or every interest class within our citizenry in the city of St. Louis. Not only those who may be impacted negatively because of clinical issues, health issues, but also we have to look at how do we re-engage businesses and people who need money because they are disenfranchised, they're on the lower rungs of earning capacity, and they are negatively being impacted as well. We have mental health issues that are growing. Our youth are committing suicides at a higher level. We also have to do something about that, working closely with the school boards and other entities with CDC to absolutely being compliant, but we also have to spread it around to ensure that people have their civil liberties taken into consideration constitutionally. So at some level, they can get back in, participate so that they can be full citizens in the city of St. Louis. Absolutely.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Spencer.
Oh, we have such an important role to play with COVID-19. We know COVID-19, like many things, disproportionately impact communities of color, communities of low income. And so as mayor, what I will work to swiftly put in place is a distribution plan for the vaccines. This is something that our federal government has failed under the leadership, if you will, of former President Trump, and certainly Missouri being last in the distribution. And the city of St. Louis has been behind St. Louis County and other areas in distributing that. First and foremost, we need a comprehensive distribution site plan to have mass distribution of the vaccine. Leaning into our FQHCs is a good first step, but it's not adequate. We need to identify those places. We need to reach out to communities that are hard to reach and those that don't have access to a website. We need an easy to use phone number to make sure that folks can tune in and plug in to get the vaccine as soon as possible. And as mayor, I'll work swiftly with St. Louis County and some of the surrounding areas to make sure that our plans are in line and are accessible to
Thank
those.
you very much. Appreciate that comprehensive answer. Ms. Jones. Same
Yes.
question.
Yeah, thank you. We all know that COVID-19 has wreaked havoc on our economy, and those who are most vulnerable have been African Americans. The first 12 deaths in the city of St. Louis were Black people. And so we also know that there has been a lack of a coordinated response between our counties, between St. Louis City and St. Louis County. When I am mayor, we will have a coordinated response with St. Louis County to make sure that everyone who wants access to a vaccine can get one and free of charge. And we will have a coordinated response to testing and other resources to be delivered from the federal government to make sure that people, that we can rebuild our economy and that people are made whole.
Okay, thank you. All right, so we'll go on to the sixth question, and Ms. Spencer, we'll start with you. This is the question, and somewhat related to the prior question. There is an anticipated wave of evictions coming due to COVID-19. As mayor, what could you do to protect renters? Detail what your plan would look like.
Sure. This is such an incredibly important aspect. One thing that I have been working on throughout my career is protecting consumers of utilities by fighting for low utility costs. This is an incredibly important piece of the housing cost bubble. We'll continue my work and advocacy in that regard. as I mentioned on the front end, coming down hard on our problematic landlords is a really important piece here. Supporting the distribution and making it easy of the federal funds for renters is a very important piece moving through the next few months of COVID. So making sure that our renters have access to the funds they need and the legal services that they may need for unfair eviction, and supporting those best practices of making sure we're putting our people first before profits and ensuring that we keep those who are currently housed in the housing that they do have.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Jones.
Yes, as treasurer, I started a new web series called Tips with the Treasurer. And one of those shows where we partnered with Legal Services of Eastern Missouri to talk about the eviction moratorium and let people know what their rights were. I'm aware that President Joe Biden has extended the eviction moratorium until March 31st, but that isn't enough. So I would work with our local judges to make sure that we can extend it past March 31st if the president doesn't do so by then. To work with, to make sure that people have, know what their rights are and make sure that they have enough time to get back on their feet, considering all of the other resources that may be coming down from the federal government with the $1.9 trillion aid package and other programs and services.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Jones.
Certainly, we want to be able to extend constitutional rights under the rubric to every citizen, every category. I mentioned earlier about those programs, those agencies that provide outstanding services for those who are disenfranchised or can't participate at a full level. And the preceding question talks about the fact that there are people who are outside of the ability to make a living, to earn because of COVID restrictions, but we certainly need to take those things into consideration as well, because there are certain businesses who test at a very low level of the contagion factor of the virus, but they are being closed and people can't be able to earn livings in order to pay those rents. So we'll connect people who have utilization of the services, as well as get the economy back up and running by allowing businesses to operate.
Okay, thank you. All right, moving on. We'll start with Ms. Jones for the next question. And here it is. One challenge facing the city during the next mayor's term is ward reduction. In your opinion, why is it taking so long, and in what ways do you think ward reduction will impact the way the mayor works with the Board of Aldermen?
So ward reduction was voted on by the citizens in 2012, and I respect the rights of our voting public. And one of the things that's taking it so long is that we have not yet received the updated census data. And as far as I know, it won't be received for the next several months because it was slowed down significantly during the pandemic. I will work with the Board of Aldermen to make sure that the process of ward reduction is fair, open, and transparent, and support appointing an independent commission or demographer to redraw the ward boundaries. And I'll do whatever I can as mayor to make sure that I'll work with the Board of Aldermen as it reconstitutes itself at 14 wards and a president of the Board of Aldermen. To make sure that we put together an agenda that'll benefit all of the citizens of the city of St. Louis.
Thank you. Okay, and Mr. Jones.
The citizens have spoken. We know Tashara is absolutely right. 2012, we know exactly what happened there. We know we're waiting on getting more data. And if you can follow my trail on what I talk about constantly is data. But the main thing that you brought up was what is going on with the Board of Aldermen and how this is going to impact things. I'm saying that there are a lot of political shenanigans going on because we should follow the will of the people, drawing out the lines equitably, making sure that there's no disparity with people and how they will be impacted in the political services that they receive. That's easy to do. We have all types of advanced tools, and I've mentioned it over and over. If we want to find out where disparity is, we can do Gini coefficient analysis. We can do all of those things that will divide the wards up fairly. But what we have to do more than anything else is respect the will of the people and move forward despite what other political agendas are to keep it going with the main current structure.
All right. Thank you very much. Ms. Spencer.
We need a citizen-led redistricting commission to take politics out of the map drawing and the process. We know that gerrymandering isn't just an issue on the federal and the state levels. It's an issue here too. We have heard the president of the board speak over and over again about how redistricting is in his hands. And this is over politicizing the boundaries that really direct how we provide the local services our citizens need. So I'm in favor of a commission. The real question here, though, is why haven't we developed a plan? Believe it or not, the initiative that citizens passed require that we will have 14 wards starting in 11 months. January 1st, we'll have 28 aldermen and just 14 wards. And there's no process in place. And this is a real failure of the president of the board, the leader of that policymaking organization that currently holds the keys to what is next for ward reduction.
Okay, thank you. Moving on. And I guess let's see who's Mr. Jones. I think you're up to take this question first. Okay, where do you sit on the policy platform spectrum? In other words, conservative, liberal, moderate, progressive, and so forth. And along those lines, what do you think sets you apart from the other candidates that would uniquely qualify you to be mayor of the city of St. Louis?
I would categorize, and you're asking about categorization, categorizing myself. I would say I'm more of moderate, and I would even categorize myself as more as being solution-based, because the second question is asking why I would qualify. If you look at MBA, I have all of the academic credentials. If you're looking at business experience, I have that as well as being an executive. If it comes down to just thinking things through, understanding tools that are very effective in moving the city forward, ensuring that we will use NPV values in determining projects, things of those nature. My history is replete with all of those types of examples that's needed to turn the city around. And my affiliation is certainly reflective of including everyone so that we can move the city forward.
Okay, thank you very much. Ms. Spencer.
Well,
Go ahead.
I'm a Democrat through and through, and I have run as one for the last 2 cycles here. This is a new set of voting where we won't have those designations, but make no mistake.
Well, wait a minute. I think the question really was this. It's along the spectrum of, let me find my place here. Yeah. Conservative, liberal, moderate, progressive, along that, not necessarily party affiliation, but, your general ideology.
Sure. And I think those, terms can mean different things to different folks, but I do consider myself a progressive and one who's interested in solutions and moving our community forward with good government and transparency. You also asked what sets me apart. Being bold, removing guns from the parks in our cities by taking an effort that could be challenged by the state of Missouri, standing up to one of our biggest developers, Paul McKee, with constructive, outcome-oriented legislation and getting it passed, standing up to the special interests that have taken hold of City Hall, fighting airport privatization, not just in words, but in real action, and being effective, getting things through the Board of Aldermen. I have passed and brought in very significant pieces of legislation and gotten them done at the Board of Aldermen.
Okay, thank you very much. All right, Ms. Jones.
Yes, I identify as a progressive or liberal. I use those terms interchangeably. See, it's one thing to have a vision and a platform, but it's a whole nother thing to turn that vision and platform into a reality. And that's exactly what I've done the last 8 years in the treasurer's office. I'm the only candidate with the executive experience of turning a vision into reality, the management experience of leading a staff of hundreds of people and a budget of millions of dollars, and relationships on the state and national levels to put St. Louis back on the map. And this is evidenced by my endorsement so far of the of Democracy for America, CBTU, the Service Employees International Union, and UAW, very progressive unions and organizations that support my campaign.
Okay, thank you. All right, we'll start out with Ms. Spencer. What is your position on charter schools?
Well, that is a question that really needs to be couched inside of a larger conversation about education. When looking at schools in general, we have been opening up charter schools willy-nilly at the behest or request of those who want to open them without thinking about a broader education plan. As mayor, I'm committed to sitting down with all education leadership and prioritizing our SLPS kids. Charter schools do have a role to play. They're here to stay. And in fact, my son attends one, but when he ages out next year, my plan is to become an SLPS parent and have our public schools work for our family. In order to do that, we have to have a long-term strategy for supporting our public school system, those kids who make up the bulk of our long-term future citizenry and the workforce that will attract employers back to the city of St. Louis.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Jones, same question. What's your position on charter schools?
Yeah, so when I was in the legislature, I passed legislation to bring accountability of charter schools up to the same level as district schools. And as treasurer, I've been working with charter schools and public schools with the College Kids Children's Savings Account program to help children save for their futures. I call on a moratorium for any new schools until we can get a handle on our current education situation to make sure that every school that's located within the city is delivering a high quality education to all of our children, no matter where they live, what zip code they are in, and what educational options that they choose. So I think that we should have a moratorium on the opening of any schools, and charter schools, like Alderwoman Spencer said, are here to stay. We need to hold them accountable.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Jones.
The greatest asset that any person has are their children. It's paramount that our children become educated so that they can enter into the 21st century and participate in all the phenomenal opportunities as far as jobs are concerned that are available to change their trajectory. In order to do so, and we currently know that about 18.5% of our students test proficient in mathematics and higher. That means we have a significant number that don't. We can use the bully pulpit as the mayor to inspire, to assist, to supplement, but we should open up every opportunity that exists, because that is the number one priority, because we can't have gaps for our children. So any opportunity that exists, from vouchers to anything else, is open for discussion relative to me, because the number one priority are the children's education, not what other people's self-interests are.
Okay, thank you. All right. So we're going to go on to the next question, which is somewhat related. Ms. Jones, you go first. And here's the question. How will you work to provide support to traditional non-charter public education so that the city of St. Louis is an actual partner of the St. Louis public schools?
Yes, the city has been a horrible partner to our public schools, primarily through our gifting of tax abatements and TIFs over over the last several years. We have been giving it out like Halloween candy and often at the peril of our school district, and we've expected them to do more as for decades. I have a wonderful relationship with this current superintendent and school board, and will continue to have a great relationship with them and staff, and be a better partner to our school district. Meet with them occasionally and more frequently to find out what they need, give that to them, and then get out of the way. And then also a meeting with our foundation to make sure that they're raising money to help our students in our school. I've raised a lot of money to help our public schools, and I will continue to have a great relationship in the future.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Jones.
Within a community development plan, there are all types of opportunities with prospective and existing buildings to provide supplemental resources, finances for our schools to help the children. But certainly, again, as I mentioned in the previous question, we can utilize the bully pulpit from the position of mayor to add and to cheerlead and to do all types of supplemental things to help. But again, it's an autonomous, separate, distinct organization. And the mayor and the city of St. Louis does not have direct control of the school board, but we can be behind them, pushing forward to ensure we are a supplemental agency that helps and assists. And we can't forget all of the other agencies and foundations that exist to help our school board, to help our children. From what I know in my analysis from the outside, the school board is not hemorrhaging money. That's not the real issue. We have to get involved with other areas that I don't have enough time to talk about.
Thank you. Ms. Spencer.
Oh, recognizing the trauma involved with the proposed closure of so many of our schools. I sat down with Dr. Adams and the elected school board, as I have many times before, and asked them to lead a candidate like myself for mayor into the best solutions. We have to start by developing a comprehensive plan for educating all of our city's children, as I mentioned previously. And this needs to be developed with all of those at the table. I'm committed to bringing in a deputy mayor of youth and education. I'll establish this position coordinating process to facilitate schools and collaboration with the district. And I'm committed to convening a community-led commission on the reuse of buildings should we need to close them. This is so we can prevent vacancies in our community. But sitting down with those who are at the helm of our school district, SLPS, that organization, that entity that educates by far the majority of our school children, is a commitment that I have shared for many years and will continue if elected as mayor.
Okay, thank you. Let's see. So we'll start with Mr. Jones. Here's a question. Given the difficulty with obtaining decent housing in American cities, in St. Louis, people lucky enough to receive housing assistance through the city's public housing and Section 8 programs report experiencing high crime and significant maintenance issues. As mayor, what steps will you take to ensure low-income St. Louisans have access to safe, affordable housing?
By extending police services that will ensure our neighborhoods are taken care of and those residents are protected. We talked about violent crime earlier. If we eliminate that component part of the 80% of crime committed by a very small number of people, people can feel safe. The second component part of that would be that when you do attract new businesses with a thorough, comprehensive economic development plan, that you factor in all of those elements and you get involved also with your workforce development plan that educates, that gets people involved to the level where they can have a job to be able to take care of their family. That's the number one thing that puts people in position so that they can benefit and change their trajectory. You get people married up with those jobs that exist, plenty of jobs out here. We have to get people with the skill sets and through trades and everything else so they can work to afford affordable housing, and market rate housing, not just affordable housing, to make sure that they're full participants.
All right, thank you. Ms. Spencer. Unmute.
Ensuring safe and affordable housing is a critical need throughout our city. First, I will establish, as I mentioned earlier, the problem landlord unit. This will ensure mandatory regular inspections of housing units to make sure that they're safe. Secondly, fully funding the Affordable Housing Trust Fund. This isn't just something I advocate for or have advocated for. This is something fought for, especially at the Board of Aldermen, and we've won, making sure that we have the funds in place to ensure adequate, safe housing. And lastly, making sure that we are supporting those entities, those service providers that are helping those who are on the brink or become unhoused. And that means working with our continuum of care and ensuring that those residents who are most vulnerable are supported by the city government.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Jones.
I think this is an opportunity to have a better relationship with our housing authority to make sure that they have everything they need to keep their residents safe within low income and affordable housing. And then also today, one of my sorority sisters is before a federal hearing to be confirmed as the new Secretary of HUD. So I look forward to working with her and her administration to make sure that we are providing a safe and affordable, safe environment for our families that are making a temporary stop, hopefully, in low-income housing.
All right, thank you. Now, this is somewhat related, and we'll start with Ms. Spencer. How will you ensure the homeless population is better served?
This is such a sacred responsibility of the city of St. Louis, any government, to support and provide for its most vulnerable citizens. We saw that bear out through the pandemic. And when that hit, I took action right away to sit with our continuum of care, those entities that have and will continue to serve those citizens, and being led by those that are serving that need. So I continue to lean into the continuum of care, empowering that organization to direct the federal funds that we do have to address homelessness. And as mayor, I will continue to strengthen that relationship, repair the broken relationship that the city has had with its homeless providers, and build a new safety net for those that are currently unhoused. As an alderman, I have been supportive of housing the unhoused in my own neighborhood, in our communities, and we need to weave those developments into our neighborhoods to be most successful.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Jones, same question. How will you ensure the homeless population is better served?
Yes, so we need to work with the continuum of care to recommit to a 10-year plan to end chronic homelessness. Also develop a homeless bill of rights so they know what their rights are. And we need to decriminalize homelessness. St. Louis is one of few cities that criminalizes homeless people, and that needs to stop. I would also look at a day laborers program to make sure that they can earn some money during the day, and then pair them up with services at the end of the day to see what the root causes are, or why they're homeless, and try to connect them with services. And then the tiny home village, we need to revisit that and make sure that the barriers aren't so high to entry, so we can make that a temporary stop for our homeless people to get housed and to get services and get what they need.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, Mr. Jones, same question.
The city of St. Louis and all other cities are dealing with homelessness challenges. But one thing that we're not considering, and I'm re-emphasizing it again, is that there are phenomenal agencies out here who do a phenomenal job in assisting the homeless and all others who need some type of assistance. We have to marry those people up with those agencies. Those agencies are out there with expertise that the city will never have and will never get. But we can be a support. We can be a financial support, and we can be a cheerleader. Again, I'll use those terms, but I'm about solving problems. And you solve those problems by getting the people who have the expertise to manage this particular category of people who are having and existing under unfortunate circumstances, get them together so that they can assist them to get them to move in a direction where other agencies can continue to move them forward so that they can become full versions of themselves.
All right, thank you. Okay, so we're going to go on to a fresh new question. And we'll ask Ms. Jones to take it first. The question is, the city of St. Louis has not had a new comprehensive plan since the 1940s. It must be noted that currently the planning department in the city has 2 staff members. By comparison, Detroit has 30. How do you plan to lead the vision for the city's future through planning and design?
Yes, that's a great question. And it's unfortunate that the city has not had a comprehensive plan since the 1940s. Some may say that they've had other plans like Team 4 in the 1980s, which led to a marked decrease in the investment in North St. Louis and parts of South St. Louis. So you're right. We need to recommit ourselves to having a strategic plan, to making sure that that our economic development policies benefit everyone, not just a few well-heeled few. And also, we can see by our development incentives that most of our development goes to 4 wards in the Central Corridor, and that needs to stop. We need to be intentional about our economic development strategy and make sure that we invest in places that haven't seen investment in decades.
Okay, thank you very much. Mr. Jones, same question.
I'm an economic development practitioner. I've been doing this for about 25 plus years. I've built economic development departments. I sit on economic development commissions for other cities. They bring me on because I think I know what I'm doing. I will say that I am an expert in that particular area. I've lamented the 4 years ago that the city did not have an economic development plan, community development plan, business development plan. There are no plans, because when you have plans, you have accountability in plans. And it seems that our politicians and leadership here don't want to be held accountable for a lack of a plan. Again, my laments seem to go unheard and unheeded. But a comprehensive plan, even to the point where people call me the plan man, because this is all I talked about, and I'm refraining from using it a lot. But this is an absolute critical component part of turning a city around. And if you don't plan, you plan to fail.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Spencer.
That's right. Mr. Jones is right. A failure to plan is planning to fail. We allocate more funding for printing than we do planning in the city of St. Louis. And this failure has worked well for some. It has oriented us in a reactionary form of development, and that has led to a developer-driven economic development plan, a lack of planning that's worked well for the developers who are able to take advantage of that system. I've been working for the last several years with organizations like the Urban Land Institute and others who engage in planning on a very serious level to build those relationships to tie into when we're able to fully fund. When you talked about Detroit, Louise, we had those business community there come to the table to provide a critical amount of funding for the planning that they're doing there. And we should be doing the same thing here in the city of St. Louis, partnering with our business community and the development community that can be shored up and ensured success by the city engaging in comprehensive planning and directing investment where it needs to go.
Okay, thank you very much. All right, so we'll start on a new question, and Mr. Jones, will ask you to tackle it first. And this is the question. St. Louis continues to see a population decline, as well as limited retention of relocated residents. Please name 3 important initiatives designed to help the city attract and retain new residents that you, as mayor, would shepherd.
Number 1, reduce violent crime, 80% committed by a very small number. And this is why Mr. Neerdorf out at Centene wants to not do the second phase. He can't bring talent in because people don't want to come to St. Louis because of all of the negative PR associated with crime. Third, my plan, which I did not change, is the economic development, business development, and community development. understanding retention programs, acquisition programs, being very specific, outlining the foundational walls of what happens within an economic development plan. When it's comprehensive, as I always talk about, it answers each one of those questions that can be asked about how you develop workforce, how you forecast and mitigate against all the negatives and instill the positives so that we won't be stuck in a hole and continue the trajectory of a downfall because we don't have those comprehensive plans and the people that know how to do it.
Okay, thank you very much. Ms. Spencer, same question.
Oh, the stagnating population is an enormous problem for our region. I was born 4 decades ago, and we haven't moved an iota in those 4 decades. We started out at 2.6 million. We're basically there. Atlanta during that time has doubled. And so the 3 steps I'll take right off the bat, as Mr. Jones mentioned, reducing violent crime. I have an actual plan in place to be able to tick us down in violent crime. Number 2, we need to modernize city government. You know, when I launched the campaign, I joked I'd throw the typewriters out of City Hall, but the reality is we have typewriters in City Hall. When we all filed to run for mayor a few weeks ago, we all filled out forms on carbon paper. It is embarrassing, and we need to streamline city government to function in a modern society to increase investment in our city. Number 3, redeveloping our neighborhoods block by block. This is something I have real lived experience with here in the 20th Ward, one of those South Side areas with a decline. And we shored up those neighborhoods by investing specifically in blocks and following up with a municipal government investment to make those investments worthwhile.
Okay, thank you very much. Ms. Jones.
Yeah, so as already mentioned, addressing our reputation as being the most violent city in the country is definitely top of mind. Number 2, putting racial equity at the center, because also St. Louis is known as one of the most racist and hyper-segregated cities in the country. So having those real hard conversations with our business leaders, with our community leaders, faith organizations, bringing everyone to the table. And then 3, an economic development strategy that not only consists of just St. Louis City, but includes our region and our neighbors to the east. We need to look at our neighbors in East St. Louis and St. Clair counties and see how we can involve them in development as well. Because in my opinion, economic development and education go hand in hand. So as we start to rebuild those systems, those institutions, I think we will see more people look at St. Louis City as a place to relocate.
Okay, thank you. All right. So the next question, and we'll start with Ms. Spencer. There is a great disparity, many people believe, between the north and south sides of St. Louis, using Delmar as a line of demarcation. What needs to be done to help the north side prosper? And what will you do to ensure the success of any initiatives?
Right. There's a palpable difference between north of Delmar and south. I bought my first house north of the Delmar Divide. It's been some years, but you know, we need to first start by holding landholders in North St. Louis accountable. Paul McKee, for example, it's crazy that we allowed this developer to own thousands of acres of city property and allow them to decay. I took swift action when I found that out and passed an ordinance requiring that he be held to the same standards as every other property owner in the city of St. Louis. We need to support the work of those from within. For example, Pastor Andre Alexander of Tabernacle, who is developing Fairground, an area just north of Fairground Park in the Jeff Vanderloo neighborhood, and the Kwame Building Group. These are organizations within our city who are doing phenomenal work, and ensuring they have the tools they need to succeed is a key piece of making sure that we have a brighter future for North St. Louis.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Jones, same question.
Yes, as the only candidate who was born and raised north of Delmar and spent most of her life north of Delmar, I have fond memories of walking from between my aunt's houses and feeling safe while doing it. And result in intentional disinvestment over the last 20, 40 years in North St. Louis, and we need to reverse that trend. And the largest landholder in the city is LRA. So an LRA is operated by the city. So what can we do to attract more economic development and more people to put that land back in the hands of taxpayers, and let it be tax generating development rather than just sitting on the rolls of the city.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Jones.
If you notice, my emphasis today is going back to the economic development plan, the comprehensive plan, the business development plan, the community development plan. None of these divides would exist if they did the work. If you're trying to hide because you're ineffective, you're incompetent in leadership, with the city is quite evident, absolutely mired in, you'll never consider anyone outside of those demarcations of a city street because you didn't plan for them from the very beginning. This puts the light on things, but there are structures within your vision, your value systems, your objectives, your strategies. All of those things go in place with your SWOT analysis and SOAR analysis to ensure that you include others in these plans. And since you don't add them in the plans, they'll be left out and disenfranchised. But under my administration, everyone has to be considered when you do the comprehensive analysis.
All right. Thank you very much. All right, so we'll start with Ms. Jones on the next question. What is your position on the privatization of the airport?
So I was against privatization of the airport, and I stand against privatization of public assets. However, do we need to monetize and capitalize on the asset that is the airport? Absolutely. So I stand ready to work with our regional leaders, with our current personnel at the airport, to develop a plan to do just that. I think that sometimes in St. Louis, we suffer from a nostalgia thinking of what our airport used to be when TWA flew, thousands of flights from the cities all over the world. We're not in that position anymore. But how do we position our airport to be doing the best that it can with the population and where we're located, and monetize and capitalize on that asset, and make it better for the region?
Okay, thank you very much. Mr. Jones.
I'm trying to unmute. One of the things that I do with my job is we have to deliver or we get fired. One of the very first things that I would do as mayor is to implement that all projects has to have an IRR deliverable or an NPV positive on all projects. When you take into consideration the airport, everything on the planet is negotiable. You talk to anyone and everything about anything, but it has to meet the standards. It has to pass the muster of an NPV calculation to determine if that project, however constructed, will be a positive for the city of St. Louis. If you don't use the analytics, if you don't use the quants, you can't make a decision, and therefore you'll start using your gut feelings and your emotion in determining things. And we've had enough of that because all of these other things have failed. There are tools to make those easy decisions on how we move forward.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Spencer.
Sure. Now, while the president of the Board of Aldermen was working with Rex Singfield and the special interest to privatize our airport, I wasn't just against it. I worked with dogged determination to make sure that we didn't sell our airport down the river. I worked with activists and citizens across the St. Louis area, including many regional leadership, which were horrified by the proposal before us. Now that we've won that fight, the question is what's next? The airport, Lambert, is our region, our state's doorway to the international economy. It is the largest serving airport in the community, but it is a part of a larger network of incredible transportation assets. We have not one, but two international airports that are going to be connected by a light rail and bisected by the nation's largest river, sitting on the second largest inland port in the nation. So what comes next is a process that needs to include the business community, the regional leadership, and all stakeholders at the table to ensure that we are building for a successful future economy that can be served by our airport.
Okay, Thank you very much. All right. Next question, and we'll start with Mr. Jones. Mr. Jones, where do you see the best opportunities to coordinate and collaborate with St. Louis County? And how would you, as mayor, go about facilitating a mutually supportive relationship with St. Louis County?
Building coalition, building consensus is part of what I do every day. Working with businesses who have their interests and representing my, and we have our interests, and we come to some type of reasonable win-win scenario. The primary thing that a mayor in the city of St. Louis should do is make sure that we get all of our I's dotted, all of our T's crossed, because we're more or less in like a courting scenario with other interests. St. Louis County, any other a partner that exists out there, because what we should be doing is building St. Louis up and making that the primary focus, because then at that point we become the hub, we become the attraction, we become the glory of this region. And anything that we want to spread to include others, they'll be knocking down the door to be here. But if we don't get our house in order, nothing else that we reach out to will happen. Even under COVID, they don't want to participate with the city because they don't, the city mothers and fathers who have put us in the hole that we're in at this particular point in time.
All right, thank you. Ms. Spencer, same question.
Coordination across the community could not be more important. The siloing of our governance structure is holding us back as a region and feeding into the stagnation that we have seen over the last 4 decades. We need to move forward with this conversation in a citizen-led orientation. And that's why I support the Board of Freeholders to start to have this conversation. I joined the executive board of the St. Louis Municipal League, and I am the first representative of that organization from the largest municipality, the city of St. Louis, in 100 years. Unfathomable, but that service there has afforded me the opportunity to build relationships in St. Louis County and the surrounding area. If we can learn anything from COVID-19, one of those things that we can regionally take from is the regional pandemic task force and addressing issues of health and other serious concerns that impact and know no political boundaries, and furthering that regional coordination in areas like that. But we should take it further and be looking at education, public safety, and other major issues that, of course, know no political boundaries.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Jones, same question.
Yes, so I have an excellent relationship with Dr. Sam Page. We have been friends and colleagues since 2008, and my election as mayor will stop this sort of petty bicker back and forth and inconsistency between St. Louis and city and St. Louis County, which was laid bare recently with how our health directives related to COVID were different in the city versus the county. So my election will immediately start to coordinate with St. Louis, with our neighbors in St. Louis County, with our neighbors in the neighboring municipalities where I also have relationships. But I think we need to take it further, as I talked about earlier, and reach out to our friends to the east. It's personal for me because I grew up in East St. Louis. My grandparents lived there. I still have a lot of family there, and we need to realize the shared destinies that we share with our friends to the east as well as our friends to the west.
Okay, thank you. Let's see. So we will start with, let's see. We'll start with Mr. Jones, I believe. Next question. In 1990, the region, St. Louis region, had about 25 Fortune 500 companies. Now there are only 5 that list St. Louis as their headquarters. How can we attract companies back to St. Louis?
By developing a comprehensive economic development plan and business development plan, because you sit down with your acquisition component part of this to talk to the leaders, the site selectors within that particular plan component part of it to attract them to the city. But they left for a reason. People act like they left and it was happening in a vacuum. They left because they saw the handwriting on the wall that there was no strategic plan to keep them and retain them. If you remember what I said earlier, a retention program is just as important. But if you don't have those component parts of your economic development plan that attracts that and deals with that, you'll never get people to come back, and you'll get more people wanting to leave. But those about conversations, getting the violent crime in order, number one, and you can open the door to those conversations. And the conversation has to talk about profitability. If you don't talk the language, the businesses won't come.
All right. Thank you. Ms. Spencer.
We have to grow our business community, or we will fail to grow. We need to first start by addressing violence, the racial inequities, and the racial divisions in our community to make our city, our community, a place where all people want to live. And that means the employees of those companies who are considering their locations. Number two, building a workforce that can attract employers. And that means providing a quality education for all our children and breaking down some of the barriers to education that our children are experiencing in our built environment. And that means addressing lead and some of the other contamination that are impacting our children's ability to learn. And lastly, breaking down the bureaucratic nightmare it can be to work in city government. I mentioned the carbon paper and typewriters earlier. We need to modernize the way in which our city, our community does business with the business community outside of St. Louis and be proactive about attracting those employers to be here. Anybody and everybody who visits St. Louis is blown away by the potential and the assets we have here. And we need to actively work to recruit them to come here.
Okay. Thank you very much. Ms. Jones.
Yes, so one of the things that will happen if elected mayor is that it will immediately put St. Louis back on the map, and I'll be able to use my existing network of state and local elected officials across this country to learn from their experiences on attracting new businesses to St. Louis. Yes, all of the things that were mentioned by the fellow candidates definitely need to be addressed, but you also need a champion and a fighter who's going to let people know that St. Louis is open for business and take the necessary steps to attract St. Louis, attract people to St. Louis. Because if we do all of those things, yes, that will make a more attractive environment, but also we need relationships on the national level to be able to have those conversations, and I am that candidate.
Okay, thank you. All right, so we're up on our last question. Can you believe it? Where did the time go? Especially when we're having fun. This is a little bit different. There were a number of residents who were concerned about the arts community and the heavy hit that community has taken as a result of COVID-19. And they want to know, what would you as mayor, and I think Ms. Spencer, you'll go first on this one. What would you do as mayor to support the arts community?
Oh, this is such an important question. We rely on our creative community to be, they are the culture and the interesting part of St. Louis. So ensuring that they can survive through the pandemic and thrive beyond that is so important to the future of our cultural assets here in St. Louis. So sitting down with the creative community, the artists that make that function has been something I've been doing through the pandemic and will continue. Those folks are the ones who can drive the solutions. We know that many of our musical-oriented artists, those who play music, haven't been able to do so in a bar or restaurant or venue, those venue owners. So making sure that we are listening and tuning in and being directed by those most impacted is an incredibly important piece. As mayor, I'm committed to working with the creative community, not just through this, but through a commission that can help guide where our city is allocating the resources that we need to support the creative community.
Thank you very much. Ms. Jones.
Yes, I stand ready to work with the Regional Arts Commission, who just also had a new CEO, Vanessa Foster Cooksey, to work with her to identify what the needs of the arts community are. I also share the pain of my fellow people in the arts community that they have not been able to perform in venues and in the theaters and concerts. It's broader than just St. Louis. I've also seen on a national level how some mayors have used a form of universal basic income to support the arts community during the pandemic and make sure that they have at least $500 a month. So that's also a solution that I would look at as we start to receive further aid from the federal government.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Jones.
I don't mean to be redundant, but the marketplace can take care of most of these problems if we come up with the proper solutions that matches and marries with the CDC and others relative to COVID, so we can get people back to work. When we look at all of those arts and entertainment venues, most and significant amounts of their money come from philanthropic and eleemosynary concerns from others. People give to the arts. They support the arts. They're important. But financial hardships now have to be overcome by allowing those venues that follow specified, regulated, and approved parameters of operation to get back to work, to allow people to exercise their ability to earn an income, and we'll see that problem disappear as well. We just have to be more prudent to look at this holistically, so that everyone will be able to move forward.
Okay, thank you very much. Well, we're just about at the end here. So I'm going to ask the candidates, boy, you guys have done a fantastic job. Just kind of take a deep breath, relax a moment, and then we'll start with our closing statements. And so since Ms. Jones went first with the opening statement, I'm sorry, we're going to ask Ms. Spencer to go first this time with her closing statement.
Sure. And Louise, just so I'm clear, do we have 1 or 2 minutes here?
That you have 2 minutes.
Okay.
Isn't that generous? 2 whole minutes. Okay.
Well, Louise, I want to thank you for being a great moderator, and the League of Women Voters in general for hosting us, and the ward organizations. Say that again.
It was our pleasure.
It was a great pleasure on my end. This was a great opportunity to talk about my comprehensive plan that I will implement my first year in office if elected to address and reduce violence in our communities. A plan rooted in data-driven solutions that have been proven to work in other cities like our own. A plan to rebuild trust between our communities and our police department, and a plan to make sure that our emergency services actually respond when they're needed most. We need to kick the special interests out of City Hall, just as I did when we won the fight against airport privatization. Those same special interests that have put the earnings tax back on the ballot. We need to get back to the real purpose of city government, and that's to serve our citizens, our most vulnerable, and that means our children and our in-house, some issues that we talked about here today. I recognize that we have a lot of issues. We certainly have no shortage of ways in which we should improve the way we interact with our citizenry, but I'm running for mayor because I believe in St. Louis. I believe in our city's future. We need new leadership to guide us in a new direction. And I believe that we should be laying the groundwork for what St. Louis can and should be looking like: a city, a community that's growing and thriving, a city that works for all St. Louisans, not just a chosen few or those special interests. So I am asking for your vote, those of you who are tuning in today on March 2nd, because I'm going to address the challenges that our city is facing with real solutions, stubborn, gritty optimism, and an unwavering commitment to making our city a better place for everyone. Thank you for having me today.
I'm sorry. It was our pleasure, Ms. Spencer, and thank you so much for participating. So, Mr. Jones, would you like to give us your closing statement?
Thank you, and I appreciate you moderating. When you take a look at the city of St. Louis, a city in which there's no doubt in my mind that Kara and Tashara love this city. I believe everyone that's listening loves the city of St. Louis. We want to do something about it. I think I bring a unique perspective and also a unique set of skills necessary to get us out of this downward spiral that the city is currently experiencing. It's speeding forward. There's a light at the end of the tunnel. I'm hoping that that light isn't a train. I'm hoping that light is a star, a beacon that shows that St. Louis eventually will be that shining star of excellence that all other cities can mimic and look forward to as a guidepost to set examples on what we need to do. Because currently, under the current administration, currently under the leadership position holders that are here, they're doing a dismal job. And it's not happening in a vacuum. It's happening because of what human beings are doing with either lack of understanding, incompetence, or just absolutely serving their own interests. I don't know which, but people are suffering. I've introduced the need, the absolute need for a comprehensive plan that moves us there. It holds people accountable. And I'm submitting that that is the real issue here. I can be held accountable. I'm looking forward to moving the city. I have those unique set of skills that will absolutely turn the city around. And I'm hoping to get the help, the assistance from everyone to help move the city in the right direction. My name is Andrew Jones. Andrew Jones, the number 4 for mayor. I'm looking forward to leading the city in a direction where we can prosper and grow and change the trajectory of everyone. Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right, Ms. Jones.
Yes, thank you to the League of Women Voters and the combined wards for holding this today. When I was growing up in the Hamilton Heights, Wells, Goodfellow, and Walnut Park neighborhoods, I wanted to be many things, but going into politics was the one thing I said I'd never do. Well, my mama, God rest her soul, used to tell me that the quickest way to make God laugh is to tell him what you would never do. See, it's one thing to have a vision and a platform, but it's a whole different thing to have a vision and platform into a reality. And that's exactly what I've done in the treasurer's office over the last 8 years. I'm the only candidate with the executive experience of turning a vision or platform into a reality, the management experience of leading a staff of hundreds of people and a budget of millions of dollars, and the relationships on the state and national levels to put St. Louis on the map. I'm committed to making something that we can all hold, touch, see, and feel. Instead of saying no to opportunity, change, and equitable growth, let's try saying yes, because you should be able to succeed here regardless of your skin color, who you love, how you worship, your zip code, or any identity you hold. I want to build a city where each and every one of you feels welcome. I'm asking you to dream bigger, because bigger and better is indeed possible. But this change won't happen automatically. This kind of change, not incremental change, but real change, real transformation, requires a mayor who's ready to embrace a new vision for St. Louis. You need a champion and someone that will fight for you. And I will be that mayor. My name is Tashara Jones. I use the she series pronouns, and I'm asking you to say yes to me for mayor of the city of St. Louis. Thank you.
All right, thank you. I just want to say congratulations to our wonderful candidates. They've done a fantastic job, and I'm going to give them a hand. By myself, Barbara. That is really great. And to our citizens out there who are watching, remember, don't forget to vote on March 2nd, right? That's election day. Remember this. And if anything, 2020 demonstrated this in many ways. Democracy is not a spectator sport. It works best when citizens participate by getting out and voting. That's one way. So tell your family and friends to be sure to vote on March 2nd. So we'd like to thank the combined ward organizations for providing this forum. We look forward to working with them in the future. So I'd like to say to our wonderful candidates, best wishes for good fortune in the future as you go forth. And so with that, I think we'll close up right now. And thank you very much. This has been a wonderful experience. Take care and good evening.